This is episode 86 of the Strip Poker Night at the Inventory podcast, also known as the Daylight Savings Time podcast, apparently. Apparently the little bot in Discord that tells you when you're all going to join according to time zones does not account for a daylight savings time, which screwed everybody up. And then we learned even further that my co-host Nord, who lives in Northern Ireland, as he's been wont to share, has daylight savings time at a different time of the year because it wasn't confusing enough. So now that we finally all made it here, I'm your host SPNatI, and my co-host Nord on episode 86 has also been 86'd himself. Apparently, he is feeling a bit better, but apparently he is coming off an illness or perhaps developing an illness. I hope you're all right and that your throat is okay.
I'm fine. I just had a little weekend cold there. Getting over it, ready and excited to talk about our topics tonight. Now, we have daylight savings at the end of March, not the beginning, as you seem to. Because time zones weren't difficult enough to wrap your head around.
I don't know, man. They just make this shit up.
It's a conspiracy by Big Candle.
Take that back. You were just kidding. Oh, wait, no, our guest was just kidding.
Hello, everybody. Happy Mario Day. Let's celebrate.
I don't get it.
Well, it's March 10th. MAR 10. It spells Mario. Don't break my heart like this. Not yet.
But in Nord's country, it would be EMR.
Yes, well, that's why he's not considered one of the cool countries.
We had you on last time, just kidding. We talked about some of your Valentine's costumes, and I think it might have been privately, but you told us that you had 2 more characters already in the works for when your current ones get onto main roster, which is not too far from now. I just sponsored them both, Sophia and Yai. What did you think of those, by the way?
I haven't read them yet.
Shit, man. Thought we were friends.
You broke my heart, remember? It was literally 5 seconds ago.
No, you broke my heart. You stole my cookies.
You're still on about that?
Stole my imaginary Discord cookies.
Think more about Torterra.
Listen, all the Sinnoh starters are good, but I think about Torterra the least. Moving on. We have a spread of topics, mostly main roster stuff, a lot of bonus content and art updates, but of course we're going to open things up with a little bit of Shilling. There is the feedback poll, the general feedback poll for the game, link in the description, still running. Having slowed down quite a bit, we're almost at 500 responses at the time of this recording, which is about how many we had last year. And you can expect that to be open. I think the deadline in the game's code is the end of March, right around when Nord gets his daylight savings time. And that is based on the rate it's declining. I'd say that's a pretty good time. So we'll keep it open for a couple more weeks. Go ahead and share your thoughts and opinions. You never know who you might inspire. I've already been inspired a bit myself, but I'll talk about that probably next time when it's come to fruition a little bit more. But yeah, we love reading your stuff. Unless you have dumb opinions, then we'll make fun of you. But maybe you should have better opinions. The point is, get your voice out there if you're out there listening and fapping to this game. There's real quick. There's another poll that Nord and just put up very recently. Hopefully, we can add that to that link to the description as well. The source familiarity poll, which is very, very specifically like going through all the sources of all the characters that are on the main roster and asking how much you know about their source material. Have you completed it? Have you watched or played or read part of it? What's the deal? Have you only heard about it because of SPNatI? Hate to be in that club, unfortunately. I can't honestly say I can't claim to have the most obscure source in the game because I think that honor ended up going to Nord's most recent character, which we will talk about in a future episode, but he'll mention her now on the host Shilling corner because it's our show and we get to show whatever we want.
That's right. We aren't going to go in depth into her inclusion in the game this week, but I've recently put out Rose from Plus Anima, a early 2000s manga series, and going by the results of this source familiarity poll, she is quite possibly the most obscure source in the game, currently on the live version of the game, that isn't just a straight up original character. The wording,
even beating out Galatea and Tyrande.
apparently, and
although to be fair though, one of the mitigating factors there is that like if people like them from SPNatI, then they might go and play or watch their source, and then that's what they would answer. For example, like Tyrande and Galatea have pretty short sources, so they might be able to do that very quickly.
One of the funny things, though, is that the way the questions are just universally worded, it goes on a scale of I've never heard of this source, I only know it from SPNatI, I've started it but haven't finished it, or I know it through just pop culture, and then there's you've finished or fully enjoyed the material. And for Yuno's source, which is a 2-minute long video, I want to see into the lives of the people who answer that they started that video and didn't finish it.
Is this the TikTok brain I've heard about?
We need to put Family Guy clips and GTA footage on the sidebar and on SPNatI to keep people's attention long enough to finish games.
In the old days, we would call that splitting attention. I don't really have anything personal to shill. I shilled Maya's Aura camera and all their fancy collectibles last time. Turns out since then there have been some debugging issues that, of course, I discovered myself instead of people reporting, so we're working our way through those. But it turns out the implementation was not quite so simple on some of those. I mean, they should mostly kind of work, except for like edge cases. I don't know, we're going to figure it out.
I think it wasn't noticed at first because people were treating it like Rouge's treasure scope, where you need to have Rouge present for it to work. And so people would have Maya present, to use her Aura camera. And so the characters that do interact with it at the moment seemed to work fine. Yeah.
It's stuff with like referencing other characters' collectibles when they're not there. And also like custom cropped poses in the character editor are apparently not working either. Hopefully that all gets sorted out and fixed.
It's definitely the sort of thing where you're being a pioneer by using this stuff, and that means you get to find all of the bugs.
Yeah.
I remember using advanced forfeit operations for the first time and finding out that some of them just straight up didn't work because no one else had used them before.
That's the thing, right? It can seem fine in the character editor, but that doesn't mean the actual game's going to work. I've resolved this year to test my own characters more, specifically for that reason, because every time I do, I find like, oh, that's been broken for months. Like, shit.
Yeah. There's some things that you can only really tell are broken because you're expecting it to happen and then it doesn't, rather than someone who would have no idea, like just playing casually.
Oh, I did make some slight custom art improvements. I gave Maya and Jura's butt poses actual feet instead of featureless nubs. That was something Nord in particular wanted to see. And in fact, I obliged him by just stealing his feet. I stole Zeke's feet, and I edited them to make them a little less blocky and muscular. Yeah, they all have feet now.
It's a detail,
which does look a lot better. It's a genuine improvement. It's. I mean, I recognize the value of it, but just didn't want to get around to it because I don't look at girls' feet. Okay, I'm not that guy.
It's one of those things I've just started adding to my most recent characters that get this, like Zeke and Pandoria, as you said. It's a detail that, like, just because all the existing character butt poses have, nubs for feet, you kind of just ignore it. But now that I've started doing this, hopefully it catches on.
Just steal shit, man. Just steal shit. Yeah. I made some other minor improvements to some of their, like, collectible art. Like Jura's arms and, like, her armpits on her pinup poses are better. But for the most part, that's it. I'm just, like, debugging stuff. Nord, you're a bit... I say this every time. You're a bit more invested in the code side of things. And as a moderator as well, that makes you the perfect candidate to discuss our next topic, which is SPNatI has actually taken on a new version number. Version 13, lucky number 13. And there's a greater rehost discourse from last time to be had as well. I'll let you explain exactly what's going on there.
So, the SPNatI Faraway Vision rehost has been taken down. This rehost was often shared because it allowed you to have the offline version experience, but available across the internet. Essentially meaning you could have offline, incomplete, or event characters available year-round, as well as event costumes. Now, with that being taken down, we have been working out a way to ensure that going from testing into the main game is still something very much worth pursuing, but still allowing people to be able to use characters that either didn't make it or have been taken down over time. And so, on SPNatI.net, you can now show legacy characters and incomplete characters.
Xander's back, baby.
Xander is in fact back. Legacy characters are characters that were on the main roster in the past, but were taken down for reasons of quality. This is characters like Amy, both Corins, May, characters that would have gone through sponsorship in the past, but just were taken down because they failed to meet standards a few years back. Incomplete characters have been shuffled about a bit. This now includes any character that didn't go through sponsorship, including if they predate the sponsorship system. These are characters like Diva, Lara Croft, Princess Peach, and yes, Xander himself.
Yeah, that big cheer about him came with a caveat that I was really surprised to see you expand the definition like that.
Yeah,
the older characters that predate sponsorship really vary in like how well they hold up. I think Xander's honestly one of the better ones in that department.
Yeah. As a note, incomplete characters, because they didn't go through sponsorship, they are available on the testing roster rather than the main roster. So even if your character is put into testing and then later falls offline, they would be still in the testing roster in a manner of speaking. Well, not in a manner of speaking, quite literally, they would still be there. There is another category we have created that has to apply to 3 characters. Atsume, Pascal, and Metaton Neo are now broken characters. Broken characters are not available on SPNatI.net, but they are available in the offline version of the game. These broken characters are quite literally unfinished and not fully functional. The other category of character are event characters. These are still only allowed to be chosen during the April Fool's event on SPNatI.net, but we are increasing the number of days you can select April Fool's characters back up to a full week. The April Fool's event itself is going to end after the 3rd of April, but we understand that a lot of people still, want to check out the characters and might be busy on those first 3 days. So hopefully with a full week, people will feel there is still value in contributing to the April Fool's event and being able to check it out in their own time. I have a couple more points on this, but do either of you have any comments on what I've mentioned so far?
Just kidding, what do you think?
As someone who plays pretty much exclusively offline, this sort of thing doesn't affect me too much. But I'm all for, people having access to our weird and broken shit that they didn't have access to before and they might want to see. So I think so far these changes have been positive, and I hope we don't add more characters to the broken category.
We don't accept characters into the broken category immediately. We don't allow new characters that would be put straight into the offline files. And in the case of these 3 characters, it's just special circumstances. I'm not too sure about Hatsume and Pascal, but I know that for Metaton Neo, it was a failed Masquerade rework attempt. It was just never seen to completion.
I think Hatsume was pretty similar. Pascal was made by one guy. If you go back to really old, like 2018 episodes, I think you can hear us talk about her. And yeah, she didn't go so well. He was kind of all over the place. She had a very bad gimmick where she fucked like a giant Eric Cartman looking situation. She was a tinkerer, you see. So this is clearly how she needs to be. This is clearly how she needs to masturbate. And some kind of eye implementation. Well before its time. You know, we talked about Arl's dynamic face technology, and this just wasn't there yet. He was 5 years early to the party. It's like the Sega CD of its time.
Arf.
Yeah. Yeah, to keep this brief, I was very pleased to see the mods immediately respond. I mean, it was kind of in discussion before, but immediately respond to the rehost going down and talking about how, like, the problem that I had was never that, like, offline characters were online in some capacity. It was that, you know, I didn't think it was a stable solution to have, like, outside rehosts. And if we could find a way to implement that on the main site in a way that's not too obtrusive, but it is there if you want to find it. I mean, that's good. Yeah, no complaints.
I believe we mentioned the going in dry rehost that has popped up.
Have you lubed up since?
Unfortunately, no. We're still going in dry. But yes, this was also coupled with a linked discussion about letting testing and main roster characters be mixed more freely. We've come to the conclusion that we still want hitting main to really mean something in terms of how much your character can be played with. But given that the testing roster is like hovering at a very smaller like character count at the minute, it's been about 9 or 10 for a couple months now. When you select a testing roster character, if you have a minimum number of lines towards a main roster character, you can then select the main roster character. The required lines used to be 5, it's now 3. It was slightly easier to expand how many characters yours can be played with from testing. There's one other policy change here that is hopefully to make it easier to get characters out of testing once you've already dealt with this before. Normally, getting a character to main roster requires you to be sponsored by 5 people. But from now on, if you've completed this process once for a previous character, as in you have gotten a character to main before, you only need the sponsorship of 3 other developers who have also made at least one character. So it essentially makes it easier for more experienced devs to help each other out, so developers can spend less time being stuck writing, writing to appease 5 different sponsorships for a couple of months when they just want to move on to a new project.
Well, that helps the 2 of you, doesn't it?
Yes, certainly could. Although I quite like getting a range of opinions for my characters anyway.
Yeah, of course. Although it's ironically, it doesn't help new creators who are the ones we've tried to bring in. We even added Discord links to the main game itself. Luckily, it hasn't resulted in any kind of raids or deluge of shitters just yet. I think having to find the over 18 button stops a lot of them.
That about does it. That explains why we've upgraded to version 13. This is quite a substantial change to SPNatI.net for the first time in a while. And hopefully people enjoy being able to use the main site to see their old favorites. Oh, and just one more thing. We're currently working on an implementation of unlockable costumes. We'll need to find a way to allow this to apply to seasonal costumes as well. But once that's sorted out, people can potentially make it so that once you've played with a seasonal costume once, you could play with them year-round, as long as you have a collectible. And on that note, remember to back up your save data if you care about your progress. We've been getting a lot of reports of people losing their data unexpectedly. That about does it for this section.
Then let's move right into the main roster. We have two big topics to talk about today, and two smaller ones, which we'll go through first. I mean, small to some extent. It's so Bluecoin, longtime creator, works on a lot of OCs, but he has a number of established characters as well. Two of them are Ribbon Girl and Spooky, and they got some very nice model updates, full art updates, just recently. Mostly changing their proportions to make them look, make their legs longer, head smaller, just generally like more adult and hopefully appealing, unless you're one of those people. I, for one, definitely think they look better, and I think most people would agree with that as well. And they got something that he's been quite the fan of himself, right? Yeah, he improved their stripping poses, he gave them flashing poses, and he also gave them butt poses as well, which I do not believe they had before. So I, for one, approve in all aspects. But is there anything you two would like to say? I think they had the same butt. Did Ribbon Girl die and become Spooky?
The implications of this are staggering.
Ribbon Girl's not dead. She's right there.
The flashing thing is a fun little thing he's been adding to, I think, pretty much all of his characters, and I quite like it.
I got no room to talk there. First thing I honed in on was adding a bunch of like butt spreading poses to both of them. He likes what he likes. I like what I like. That's the great thing about SPNatI. You can just add whatever you like, and they have to deal with it.
I guess if we're talking about them together, I'll let you say your piece in a minute. Just kidding, but I think the main thing is proportion changes and adding custom body details. In Spooky's case, he actually did that for all of the monster creatures that appear in Spooky's epilogue that you sort of throw yourself at in order to get to Spooky herself.
Right.
There's a fair amount of effort for that, and then for Ribbon Girl, she got dialogue updates as well, helping smooth out some of her like rougher edges that have just sort of cropped up over time.
Yeah, I really like these updates. On another pod or another episode, they might be slightly bigger topics. They're just kind of getting overshadowed by the other stuff we have to talk about today. But just kidding. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah. I mean, I think these are both very serviceable updates. I think Spooky's update happened really quickly, and her model's not very complex or anything. But then going into the epilogue and seeing that things have changed there too, I think just the scope of it does make this kind of an impressive upgrade. I think all around, very good. Ribbon Girls, I think I had to dig back and see what her old model looked like, and definitely it is improved in a lot of places, a lot closer to the source, a lot of just nice little details to make it that much closer to what she's like in arms. I can't speak too much about what's changed with the dialogue, but I mean she's got some good ones in there, and she's fun to play with. So I think on the whole, someone's been busy, and the effort's been worth it.
Yeah, they didn't like fundamentally change much as characters, but they're definitely both a lot more appealing now, and it's nice to see.
They got the TLC they really needed without going overboard. So definitely welcome improvements.
Well, speaking of TLC and perhaps going a bit overboard, Metalitar put out something he has been working on for a literal year. So there's a character in SPNatI called Nami. You may have heard of her. She's been in the game for a while at this point, famous for pioneering all sorts of like custom drawn, like literal pinup poses and pose maker stuff, and also being from One Piece, which means that whenever we have a resort now, she gets about 400 more votes on the popularity poll compared to everyone else. Not saying she doesn't deserve it, but like the gap is immense and intimidating. And on top of all that, he pioneered a lot of the effort and narrative focus in epilogues as well. She famously had a very long epilogue, about 30 minutes long. People joked about how he just made like a whole One Piece episode into an epilogue with like a full original character and setting and everything, where you go on an adventure with her. And it was full of like plot threads, and it was really wholesome in the end, and it really felt like a coherent story. And you get all these like fun custom angles of her, you know, like crawling through the vents, looking at her butt and all stuff. I mean, that's the one that I liked. Are you surprised? And it was great, and it really pushed the boundaries of what epilogues were capable of. And there was exactly one man on the planet who thought it wasn't good enough, and it's the guy who made it. So, to be fair, it did feature her old art, where she had kind of bushier hair. And I don't know if he originally just intended to update her model in that epilogue, but it ballooned into something far greater. And by far greater, I mean it's now about 2 hours long, with basically the same exact plot structure and characters. The best way I could summarize it is just there's just more of everything that happens. All the things that happen in it are basically the same. There's just more of all of that, including fucking her more, obviously, and for longer, which is good. I will let the others give their thoughts in a bit. I will say I was one of the early testers. I tested it a couple days before it was officially released to spot any like bugs or typos or whatever. But I'll give my thoughts a bit later. But those were my brief impressions, or at least my summary of it. Is that if you've played the original, the only thing you might miss is that it's not about the original is that it was a lot shorter, which could help. But just kidding. What did you think of Nami's new epilogue, or I guess remade epilogue?
As someone who's, there's a lot of devs out there who haven't made an epilogue, which, to their credit, they're very smart for not doing that, not embarking on that journey. But
right, because you just revamped Sheena's epilogue.
I did revamp Sheena's epilogue. Yashola's got her own epilogue, which both Stola's I had to remake myself because I also did a model update for her. That was way back when. And then Sheena's I had to revamp because I made a model update for her. And then I tacked on more to it. So in a sense, I have done for Sheena what Metallitard has done for Nami, except, on a much smaller scale. I did not go near as ham as he did. But the original epilogue was, of course, the kind of the shining gold standard of like things you could do in an epilogue, and he's really run with it. It's like you said, it's a lot longer. There's a lot more going on there. The plot is quite the tale, beginning, middle, end, climax, everything. And I think it never forgets entirely what it is, and there's lots of little spicy bits peppered in so that you don't go too long without getting back to what you're here for, which is to get down and dirty with Nami and some other things. So I think a lot of effort went into making custom assets for all the different positions everyone's in, and a lot of care was taken with pacing everything out. I don't think it's entirely perfect in terms of pacing, but it's a very long story, and that's hard to get right when you tell a very long story. Look at One Piece if you want to know what I'm talking about.
That's something you mentioned that I'd like to highlight as well. It seemed like for a while he was in a bit of a rut where he wasn't making much progress on it, and what seemed to break him out of it was specifically, I don't have it in front of me, but he eventually just drew like Nami at every angle in like a 360 degree turn, so he could literally just spin her around. and that's how like all these like great sex positions basically came to fruition, and that I have to say is very inspiring. That's how because I looked at that, I was like, I could do that, and that's exactly what I've been working on over the last few months is putting that together for my girls as well. I hope it'll start paying dividends.
Yeah, that visit from Mother Necessity was probably one of the most impressive things about all this is just, the spinning Nami at every angle. And only recently have I begun dabbling in those kind of territories. And I very much feel the temptation coming on of, I did recently download Inkscape, and I'm like, I used to use this for stuff. Maybe I should start using it for stuff again. So I may be breaking into that sort of territory myself very soon. And not even because I'm trying to write my the Homer's Odyssey of my characters. I'm just trying to make two ninjas smooch each other. That's all I'm trying to do. So yeah, I mean, it's just an impressive amount of work that he's put in, and obviously, he suffers from having standards, which is the worst thing a developer could have. But heck, if the results don't speak for themselves.
Nord, I'm sure you have some praise for it, but I think you may have some criticism as well.
I do want to start with all of the praise because it's very easy with anything to come up with a million little nitpicks and all and faults and all of that. But I just want to say that like Mel is just an actual artist. He draws actual fan art of Nami and it's real and other One Piece characters and it's really good. And he's definitely like flexing a lot of his talent here with all of these. Like not even just the drawn poses, but the camera angles and cinematography he's put into various scenes to like actually sell like action and dynamic movement, even with this like limited, honestly cursed 2D style. He's like forced to work within because of Kisuke.
I don't think he was an artist. I think doing this made him an artist.
Yeah. Which is even funnier to think about, but it does show that he put a lot of love and effort into this. And so I want to get that out of the way first, that like this is easily a 10 out of 10 epilogue experience if you can get past the length. And that leads me into some of my criticisms of it, because okay, so some general notes I made are of like it's a very interesting setup for like a unique story with like featuring Nami and the player with I presume I have unfortunately forgotten her name, the captain
Sinclair.
Sinclair, yes, that's it. Thank you, Sinclair.
Oh, he updated all the other models as well. Even a Nico Robin, who when the epilogue first came on, she was not in the game.
I presume Sinclair is just an OC, and she's very well done. Stuff like the way she was explaining her ability definitely felt like it was written as like anime-isms, like this is my ability, haha. So it's very funny and creative writing. It flows well like you would if you were like watching an anime episode or reading a manga chapter. And all of the like content and animations are all like very competently made and well put together. Now, back to my main criticism is that I think this was described as the director's cut, or maybe the previous version was. But either way, this bigger, longer, and uncut version, I honestly think would have flowed better if parts of it were like trimmed out. Because even like director's cuts still leave scenes on the cutting room floor. Metal is with this and Perona's epilogue. It has shown that Metal is very good at writing emotionally charged dialogue and scenes. And honestly, by the end of it, when you're in the treasure room with Nami and like you do it with her like 3 or 4 times in these different positions, and then you think that's the end of it, and it's like, okay, they're talking to each other and watching the sunset, and it's really emotional. Oh, that's a great way to end it. Nope, you do it 2 more times. And it just feels like, oh,
Yeah.
come on. Like, even, like, I'm worried I'm sounding pretentious here of, like, how dare you have more smut in this, smut game, but it definitely feels like he went with everything and put it all in, and that's why the epilogue takes an estimated 100 minutes to complete, is that he went with every idea rather than trimming it down to just the best ones and making it a tighter experience overall. That's my main thing out of the way, and then just on a tangent to that, the stuff between Luke and the captain, also well made, but also I laughed at it because it definitely it was absolutely a thing of, oh wait, this is meant to be for people to get off to, and it's been 20 minutes of just setup. I'd better have this little side scene here so they don't get bored waiting until you get to do it with Nami at the end.
I think he's relying a lot on the scene select feature that was added not too long ago. For stuff like that, like if you want to watch specifically that, for instance.
Yeah. And it does warn you when you boot up the epilogue, this is a long thing. Take breaks and use the scene skip to come back to it later. Oh yes, it felt strange, but going by a comment he made in Nami's channel when I left this as a feedback report, I think this is just the way he wanted to write it, is that it feels strange that Sinclair seems to get a happy ending where, yeah, her treasure was taken, but hey, she has that crew member she banged, and she still has a ship, and she gets away scot-free after having stolen from the island folk and also having enslaved a widowed mother and her children. Does that sort of karma Houdini stuff happen all the time in One Piece?
Her comeuppance is that her boyfriend now has a small dick.
The horror.
I mean, One Piece villains, sometimes all the justice they get is they get punched really very hard, and then they just kind of get left alone and forgotten. So
okay, so I guess it's accurate then. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, I like Dragon Ball. I can't really judge him too much.
Yeah, I mean, either
Vegeta lives with the richest woman in on Earth instead of hell, where he belongs.
You either get knocked out and never talked about again, or you suffer some fate worse than death, or you come back 500 episodes later with a new motivation.
Have you seen a lot of One Piece or read it?
I'm watching One Piece not right this second, but I'm in the middle of it at the moment. I can never get out of the East Blue. I was very bad, but I'm very good now, and I'm making progress.
Is this very true to Nami's character? Do I just have to take Metal at his word?
Yeah, this kind of thing happens pretty much everywhere they go.
I do like the one bit where she keeps steadily lowering the amount of the share of the treasure she's going to give you. It's kind of a classic joke, but
that is
a great one.
That is quintessential Nami right there. So
a fantastic running joke, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all my criticisms aside, it is very well done. I've got notes here. Scene 16, Hut. The butt jiggle animation is particularly well done. Sure you appreciated that, SPNatI.
The butt jiggle, buttery smooth, I described it as. Do either of you have any other big thoughts, or is that the broad strokes?
That's the broad strokes of it all. It's a case where he's done a great job of it all. I just feel like it didn't need to be 100 minutes long. 80 minutes would have been enough.
30 minutes probably enough, to be honest. But
I feel
I understand wanting to do more.
If you want to make 100 minutes of epilogue, maybe make 5 20-minute epilogues. But I totally respect this is what he wanted to do, so he did it, and more power to him. But yeah, I think the broken apart, it would have not lost a whole lot. but also, I get it. But also, bite size.
Yeah, this is kind of okay. So what I was getting at before with some of my, or like me being an early tester, is that I already expressed a lot of my thoughts and criticisms to Metal himself in private. So he knows most of them already. A lot of them were nitpicks or like style choices. Just like, I would have done this a little bit different, but it wasn't bad. The ending, Nord, you were talking about, that's definitely one of the big ones where it really felt like it was over. It kept going. You don't really want to fake people out like that, especially after 100 minutes.
It was like the Return of the King, where it ends 3 different times.
All the crew comes back and you bang all of them.
Show me what that Gear 5 can do.
It's, even the last scene is called epilogue. Her epilogue has an epilogue.
Yeah.
But my main thing with the pacing was not necessarily that it was too long, but there is so much narration. Pretty much everything that happens has like a narration text box associated with it. Sometimes it's necessary because it's like maybe it's like an action thing that's kind of hard to convey visually what was going on. He seemed to disagree. He felt most of them were necessary. Again, that's I'd say kind of a style thing where I'd say most of them were not. To me, it felt like they were often like you put your hand on Nami's butt and it has the nice jiggle animation, and it said like you touched Maya's butt or Maya's. Oh, there we go. Freudian slip. Nami's butt. There's narration saying you touched Nami's butt, or it feels good, or something like that, which to me just doesn't feel necessary. I think it's the thing a lot of people have where it just feels so silent. It feels like there needs to be more going on when you're making an epilogue, and I personally don't think it needs to be. Like, if you cut out a lot of the what I consider extraneous narration, like the whole epilogue length would go way down in terms of like what actually happens. That's my main criticism. Everything else I'm going to say is really from like a style perspective, because I'm coming at this from a very weird place. I do plan on remaking and expanding all of my epilogues in a very similar fashion. I have full scripts written for all of them, male, female, all that. Quite extensive, and kind of in this vein where there are other characters trying to crowdsource. Please help with that. Please fill those bounties. Different custom angles drawn for them. Lots of sexy, steamy, good times, but also like genuine characterization and like suspense and danger. And it's nice. I think when they're done, they will be able to coexist with Metal's work, because we do have very different styles. That's what I'm talking about, where I saw things like, I'd probably do that a little different, but it's fine that he does it his own way. That's good. That's variety. Means they're not always the same. I can talk all I want. Talk is cheap. They're not made yet. They're only written, but I'm working on it. I'm building up everything I need. I have a lot of the angles done already, and there's more to come, although apparently I got to convert them all to vectors and shit because you can't zoom in on them. There's always something else to do. One of the things is, like, I don't think any of them individually are going to be as long as this one. Altogether, when all of them rank, because I have like 6 written, yeah, they'll probably be longer than this. But that's the thing, like, when you have like all these sex scenes with Nami, there's definitely a point where like maybe you could have like a sequel epilogue or like a separate epilogue. It's like, hey, if you want even more sex scenes with Nami, here's stuff like cut out to make it go faster. And you could just unlock that separately. Maybe that would have been better. Again, with the scene select, maybe it's not that huge of a deal. It does warn the player ahead of time. One thing that I kind of saw on Perona's epilogue and repeated here, especially in comparison to my own scripts, I was kind of laughing. Not at the epilogue, more at myself. What I learned, like the way Metal characterizes the player and his interactions with Nami, one of the things he really wanted to do, he told me, was give more scenes where you're forming a sort of emotional connection, as opposed to just like wacky, I guess, harem hijinks, anime hijinks, where you like fall into her butt and her boobs and stuff. There is one example of that where you like come all over her just by accident, basically. But for the most part, it's like you, like her working through her sexuality and she, like her problems with intimacy. and like very gradually touching her and stuff with full consent at all times, and just being very gentle with her in general and having her take the lead a lot. And I mean, would you agree with that? Do you think that was well done?
I think it was well done, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like the worst thing that can happen just in relation to a SPNatI character in general is making them not consent to whatever is like happening. So I think making the like actual intimacy definitely feel consensual helped a lot to sell it.
So I would never say, like, I would never write something where, you know, the character was not consenting. But I did laugh at myself, just like here and Perona's, just how gentle the player was with her. Like when I learned about myself comparing like the scripts in my head is like, wow, I am both a bigger pervert and more of an asshole. In terms of like, just, you know, I'm not taking advantage of her, but like, you know, if May is in front of me and she's naked and we're getting down and dirty, you know, just fucking go for it, man. Just, you know, it's off to the races. You know, smack her ass a little bit. Show her how bad you want it. You know, get a little assertive. that's just me though. Again, maybe I'm just a prick. Well, I'm definitely a prick. But you know, I think Maya is someone who would probably respond to that better anyway than Nami. But I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for Nami, it definitely feels like she has to overcome the fact that she is an anime character whom keeps getting into these, like, harem anime hijinks, as you put it.
Yeah.
Like, taking it back for herself.
Yeah. Maya has some issues with intimacy, kind of, but I think for the most part, she's honestly a little bit masculine in that way. It's just like, let's just fuck. Don't think about it too hard. And Jura, I mean, you know, Jura's just happy to be beloved.
It was fun seeing Nico Robin there, and just kind of being nonchalant about the whole thing, and like Nami being the only one that really cares of like, hey, the villain's main power is to remove your clothes. And so
yeah, Robin's like, oh no, not that.
Anything but that.
Yeah, in One Piece, Robin isn't usually used for that kind of thing. I mean, she's standing around with like her tits almost all the way out most of the time, but so is Nami. But Nami is usually the more like, you know, caught in a situation where, you know, her clothing has been compromised or people are ogling her. But you know, Nami is on record in the anime as like being like she's pretty confident in her body, so she doesn't like, really mind people, you know, just random strangers seeing her, and she wants to dress however she wants to dress. So I think, you know, she's confident. Anyone who she really didn't want to, you know, interact with her, she just give them a little love tap and send them on their way.
On a tangent to something you said earlier, just kidding, about, you know, you could have made 5 20-minute epilogues. I don't think anyone would look at this epilogue and think, oh man, I have to make one of this length or greater, or man, I need to match this level of quality or else it's not worth it. I think shorter epilogues are definitely the way to go for most people, and it's only if you really want to and like have the creative drive to do these longer story-driven epilogues that you should go for them.
Yeah, and I mean, my point was less that, like, you know, I mean, I've gone on record even here, I think, of saying, like, you know, shorter epilogues are probably better in the long run. And I think my point was more that, you know, the effort, I think, would have, you know, from a statistical standpoint, would have been better spread across multiple experiences, multiple characters, maybe even. But I'm definitely in the school of thought, like, you know, shorter kind of brief epilogues, you know, are better from a development standpoint, better from kind of a player attention standpoint. And I think the original Nami epilogue was it wasn't so long that it couldn't be like, played and then aspired to. I think in kind of an ironic way, him making it even longer makes it unaspirable to, which is good, because then people won't be like, well, I'm not going to do that because that's way too much. So I feel like, we've boomeranged back around to,
You underestimate me.
Not you specifically. I'm talking about sane people. But yeah, I think I'm definitely on board what you're saying here, Nord. Just like, I definitely agree that, hopefully no one watches this monstrosity and is like, yes, this is exactly how long I want to make my epilogues.
What I don't want people to watch this monstrosity and think is everyone needs to have an epilogue like this.
Yeah, that's not happening, love.
There's a whole separate rant there about how I don't really like epilogues in general, even though I want to make them. It's just, I think they're a bit of a design flaw in the game itself.
Everyone wants
exactly, because you get people like this who demand it. But anyway,
and yet you're reworking yours instead of unlisting them. Curious.
Well, can't beat them joining.
Living in society.
I just want to fuck her, okay?
On the subject, there's one final detail I want to mention, which is he went through the effort of giving the player character a model, but also making it so that their skin tone matches whatever you have tagged yourself as.
Yes, he did that. He also changed a couple scenes dialogue. If you've played with Robin and she knows who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, she thinks you're accosting Nami, so to speak.
It's definitely possible to make things conditional based on things that happened in the actual game of SPNatI that you played before this hour and 40-minute long movie.
Yeah, I talked mostly about how I was more of an asshole, but yeah, I am more of a pervert as well. I thought what you did with her, Nami, was honestly kind of tame compared to some of the stuff I wrote. Like I have a whole epilogue idea that's specifically for stuff that's a little less vanilla, just shove it all into a separate epilogue for people who aren't really on board with that. But
epilogues for weirdos.
Yeah, the back under the counter epilogue. You got to ask for it in the back. But yeah, Metal kind of talked like this was going to be his last act as a dev. He seems like he's hanging around a little bit more. He's going to. I think he just kind of caught the artist bug. He's been drawing fan art and he's been working on model updates as well, and just drawing assets more and more. Every time I think that I've finally met the curve of isekai art, people are just like, hey, like you and like Nord and Metal and stuff. They're just like, hey, we're gonna start drawing stuff in Flash now. Okay, yeah, sure. I guess we're doing this now.
Isekai art, you say?
Let's just be artists. Well, speaking of which, that's actually going to be our last act on this episode. I know I said we had one more topic, but we've about hit an hour, so I'm just going to cut it off here. We'll talk about it next time because this has been enough. Go figure. Nami's epilogue runs just a little bit too long. Can you believe it? Nor, just kidding. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? Or Shill? Did you fall in love with Nami?
I'll tell you what. I was really wondering if he was going to commit to the bit at the end where you see MILF Nami, a couple of years later, and it turns out to just be a dream.
How could he make her any thicker? It's not a brush, that's a Band-Aid ribbon. I know. Just kidding, anything?
Hey, if you're a developer and wait. This probably is going to air too late for that. Yeah, I got nothing. Never mind.
Yeah. Ironically, despite how gargantuan it is and how much of a step up it is from the old epilogue, I do think it kind of it's missing that wow factor. that the original had, because they're like how much like this is just like a refinement and improvement and expansion, but that one was like the first that was like it actually felt like a story.
I mean, I'll disagree with you there, and that's mainly because I think I played her original epilogue once, and I didn't commit as much of it to memory because I wasn't, preparing for a podcast recording back then. But I think it had that wow factor. I don't know what you're talking about, really.
Maybe it's because I've been drawing those angles myself. I know.
You've been in the pits for too long.
Yeah.
You know how the hot dogs are made.
It just feel like on like metatextually, it just like, or like on a meta level, like the original just pushed the envelope of like what an epilogue could be more.
You can't spell metallitar without meta.
That's a good joke to end on, right?
No, it's terrible, but we should get out of here before people start shooting.
Good night, everybody.